Cool. All right, take it again from the top. Hey, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. It's a fine Thursday, and we'll just keep working on some fun animation stuff. We'll review what we covered on Tuesday. That's what either through, well, I'm making a video that covers what we covered on Tuesday. It should be done by this afternoon. Um, and I'll probably be able to salvage the recording from last class too. So you have a couple ways to look at what we're covering. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and keep going, but we'll go back and review everything because this first couple weeks of the class is kind of the steepest part of the learning curve, that you're going from nothing to something. So, for if you haven't really animated before, or if you're learning a brand new program or way of doing things, it's a pretty steep curve, but there's a lot of progress. So you're making tons of progress really quickly. So it's kind of the fun part. It's easy. I'm kind of addicted to the steep part of the learning curve, as a friend of mine said one time. I liked that phrase. Like, there's kind of like the rush and the thrill of having these new superpowers at your disposal. Like, I could make drawings come to life. So we'll just kind of keep playing with this. And so I changed the due date a little bit on Moodle. So I'll screen share over here. So I just put a project 1 in here. And so we'll work on this this week, obviously. We'll work on it all next week too. And then we'll look at these on Tuesday, April 20th. So we'll actually have a little bit more time. I had said the 15th originally, but let's change that to the 20th. That'll give us more time because there's still quite a bit to cover. And we don't even know what these things are yet. So what we're going to be covering. So we'll be using moving holds, which we covered. We'll talk about fade ins and fade outs, smear frames, morphing, and some color transitions. We might add a few more things in there. And so this can be totally your idea. And I'll be kind of doing a little demo, like a little character or something today. And if you're really just like got your hands full, you can basically just do like some kind of variation on what I'm doing. But if you're feeling like sassy and you don't need to wait around for that, you don't have to. You can really go ahead and do your own thing, make up your own character, and or it doesn't have to be a character even. It could ultimately be abstract, but if you wanted it to. And then you can just kind of build this and make this just go off, basically. You don't have to wait around for what I'm doing. I'm going to give kind of the basics of it, which might be cool for what your sensibilities are. But if you have a different approach, or if you wanted to do something in 3D, like a lot of you guys have already had a lot of Blender classes, or you've already done animation, or you've done motion graphics, you can really do your own thing on this. And there are a lot of ways to use these principles and ideas it doesn't have to be the way that I'm showing you, if that makes sense. If you have any question about that, let me know. But if you've had classes with me, you kind of know I'm like, yeah, do it. Sounds great. So because I think that's where we want to ultimately be going with this. But if this is your first time animating, this will be really fun. I mean, you'll really enjoy this kind of process, and you can just let yourself learn it without having to feel like you're creating like your magnum opus animation within the first 2 weeks of learning how to animate. We'll have time to develop your own style and everything as you go. But if you're already feeling it, go for it. Any questions on that? I'm sure.
I did have a question, Miles.
Yeah, Gary.
Is there any chance I could get you to do me a favor with these specific things, the holes, the fade ins and
Uh-huh.
outs? If I could get some sort of like a PDF or something of them and what their usages are.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let's see. I wanted to.
Thanks.
What I think on our shared drives, where is it here? So yeah, and also you guys all should have gotten invited to the shared drive. So there's you started to make your own student folders in here under the students with your name on it. Then you can just drop stuff off there. Um, and I put under the class materials. I'm going to try to do something like this. I don't know if this exactly meets what you're talking about, Gary, but we can talk about this more. But this is a demo file. I'll just go ahead and download it here, I guess. And you can go ahead and download this too. That covers basically what I'm going to cover in this today, and yes, and on Tuesday. And let's go ahead and open this up. So this kind of has my annotations on it. And so I noticed on my Mac, this seems a little bit, oh no, it doesn't. Well, let me try this again. Oh yeah, it works, kind of. Huh. Well, it's kind of annoying. I guess if you zoom out a little bit. I think yeah, on my Mac, it behaves differently than it does on Windows. I'm not sure why that is. Oh well. All right, this is actually kind of answering my question. So, or answering your question. I'll go ahead and make this into a actual notes as opposed to just doing it on the file. I thought this would be kind of cool, but there's too much variation in people's screen sizes, so this annotation won't really work the way that I wanted to because it's showing kind of how all this stuff works. So I'll go ahead and make that available as like a PDF. I think that's a good idea. But this folder, this file does actually show kind of this process. And so just to answer that question, Gary, I will go ahead and do that.
Cool. Thank you.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, because I have some experience with animation, but actually like working with some of these things that you're talking about, I'm not familiar with being able to go back and reference it because
cool.
Like I'll take the time and like print it out and post it up somewhere so I can reference it constantly and
nice.
Like.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah, that's great. I will do that. Yes. And that's actually a good practice. I do that for myself a lot of times, especially when I'm trying to learn something that's complicated. I'll go ahead and make notes for myself. And you can do that in Photoshop or whatever. I do it with, I do a lot of this kind of thing too, just on paper and have it around so I can
kind of Post-its all over my desk with different things for Blender or 3D printing. It's very important. Very important.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do that. That'll be fun.
One other thing I was hoping, I did get an invite to the shared drive, but if you could do me a favor and throw a link onto the Moodle, that would be awesome. That way I could just reference it there.
Oh yeah, I'm wondering how that works. I was going to do that, and it seemed a little confusing to me. So
well, you don't have to take it right now, but if that's possible, that'd be awesome. Or I'll just figure it out myself.
Get link. Well, okay, that's easy. So it seems like there's not a link to the shared drive that I can get a link to, unless someone else knows how to do this. I might just be missing something. That's because that's what I was looking for, because I usually do a link. And then like if I go to share here, let's see, shared drives. I think you can also bookmark it yourself under your browser too, but let's see. So I might be able to just post, well, no, that's going to be the whole thing. Okay. Well, I'll try this. Let's try this and see if this works. Copy, paste. And edit. Our shared. All right, well, I'll give it a shot. Maybe it worked. Cool. All right, what else? Anything else? So if you have questions about what we covered on Tuesday, make sure they get answered in the first 5 or 10 minutes so that, you know, you don't want to get behind on this stuff. And like I was telling people, I've been, you know, teaching the 203 class for quite a while now, the EMDA 203, and we're teaching it this year. And I'm kind of getting to sit back more and be, you know, let David and Jeffrey drive more. And so it's fun to be in the class, and I'm realizing like how easy it is to just miss something, you know, because you get focused on what you're trying to do, and then you look up and they're like, wait, how did they get like 3 steps ahead? So make sure that you speak up. don't get behind on this, because you're not the only one, and it really helps everybody to kind of slow it down and just get in the groove on it, you know. And similarly, don't be afraid to move ahead. So if you're already going like, oh yeah, okay, I got this, go for it. Like this is what I'm kind of saying variations on the same theme today, but like, you know, let yourself go where you need to go with this, and don't feel you have to do it like I'm doing it. So, but make sure that you advocate for what you need to know. And, you know, I'm totally happy to stop and go over things, because I can sometimes just get on a roll with this because I've been animating for a while and it can go by too fast sometimes. All right. Does that make sense? Or have I lost the plot completely? All right. Well, let's go ahead. We'll find out. So can everybody see Blender still, or did I move out? Yep, we're good here.
Yeah, it's up.
Cool. So this file I said is up on the Google Drive. So if you want to look at it, and so this I'm going to also show you. We talked about annotations. There's an N menu. So if I hit N on my keyboard, it opens up this side menu, and that N shortcut works on a lot of different windows. So I'm down here in the dope sheet, and you can see there's also the N shortcut works down here, and it works up here. And I don't know what N is short for. I don't know why they used N. I just call it the side menu. So the side menu has over here a view tab. It has all these different tabs here. And some of the add-ons that you might choose to use later have their tabs over here as well. Like for the 3D folks, there's this cool one called Blender Kit. But it has under view, there's an annotation section, and I can just hide my annotations here. So this thing here, this big black triangle and this black rectangle, this is the camera view. And so the camera view, if you have a numpad, you can access it as by hitting numpad 0. Since a lot of people are on laptops and they don't have that, you can access it with this little button here, this little camera button. And so that just brings you back to what your camera is looking at. And we'll talk about the camera in just a sec. I just wanted to check this one more time. Yeah. All right. Cool. So this is the file that I've uploaded. So this is basically what we did on Tuesday. It's a little variation on it. So there's we've set our frame rate to 12 frames a second. And we've got, you can kind of see the way our keyframes are clustered down here. Yeah.
I had a question, and it might be kind of a silly question, but it was something that I was a little confused about yesterday. And you know, how did you get your dope sheet to like expand like that? Like, you know, how it's like you could see every like 5, 10, 15. Like I couldn't figure out how to do that yesterday. I could only get it up to like 20, like in increments of 20. Great
question. So there are a couple ways to do it. Let me see if this works. If I go down here to the view menu on the dope sheet, I can say frame all.
Okay.
And that actually doesn't show me the full scope of my range, but it shows me the range of wherever there are keyframes. So now I'm pretty
Okay.
zoomed
All
in.
right. So was that under view
Yeah.
frame all?
Yep. View frame all. And the shortcut for that is the home key on your numpad. Again, a lot of people don't have that because and you have to make sure that your mouse is over the dope sheet. So when I did it out here, it framed the whole shot. And when I do it down here, it'll frame the whole menu or the whole menu.
Okay,
whole,
I see that now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so there's also, like, if I wanted to zoom in on this little section and work this section really closely over here, I could select those. And then I can go up here to view frame selected, which is numpad period. Mouse is in the wrong window. Very nice. That's not really wanting to frame it. It doesn't want to zoom in on that. That's interesting. Oh, well. It was fun while it lasted. But
okay.
Yeah, you can zoom in manually with the middle mouse scroll wheel. You can middle mouse scroll in, and then middle mouse button click and drag to get zoomed in.
Awesome. All right. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
sure.
That was a little bit of a silly question, but I was
No, that's not that's a perfect question. That's the least silly question I've ever heard in my life.
Okay.
That was deadly serious. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, those are great. Yeah, so you can pan around with the middle mouse. Cool. All right. So this was going, just to review what we did is we, I'll start over. We'll do this again, actually. So we have a couple of these anticipation frames. We have some kind of a zip frame, and then we have a squash. I didn't do a squash last time, or a stretch. Sorry, this is a stretch frame. Stretch, a squash, and then a return. So, and this is a little more freewheeling. You can see how janky this drawing is. I mean, it's really, it's really not like beautiful or anything, because in animation, you're moving so quickly. The frames are going by so quickly. You really don't have time to see what is actually going on in any given frame. So if there are little imperfections on it that might drive you crazy, if you were drawing this in your sketchbook or something, you're having to stare at it for the rest of your life. But in animation, stuff's going by in like a fraction of a second. So it's more important to get the big picture down. So this is an example kind of an impact where you can see that I've deliberately got the end of this ball matching the squash frame. And so what that does is it creates a sense of a hit. It creates a sense of this impact. And then this squash, it kind of sells it. Now, I could actually, and I'll show you, this is how you can start to move your stuff around once you've drawn it. So right now we've started off in draw mode up here in our mode selection menu. And actually, when I opened this file up, it took me into object mode. And we'll talk about object mode. We'll talk about what you can do in the different modes here in a moment. So we went from object mode. We're going to go to edit mode this time, because we started off in our, if you ever want to draw in Grease Pencil, you have to switch to draw mode. But you can go into object mode, and that can move objects, which you would do in 3D. But let's go to edit mode up here. And so edit mode is going to bring us into the position where we can select and move things like points, strokes, and fragments of whatever you call them down here. Stroke points between other strokes. So I'm going to go into stroke mode, which is the select mode for stroke points. And that way I can just click on this and this whole thing turns orange. And then I can move this around. And the shortcut for moving in Blender, I just think about it as grab. It's G. So I just hit G, and now I can move this stroke around wherever. So just to kind of illustrate the point of that hit frame, that impact frame, I'm going to move this off of the impact, and it'll have a different feel. So I'm going to slide it over here. And so it's not hitting here. It'll still look okay, but it'll look a little bit different. So let's go ahead and play this back. So it still works. But I think it looks better when you sell this impact a little bit more. You know, this is an old animator's trick from the old days. I remember reading about this in like the Animator's Survival Kit, which is a cool book. I recommend it actually. Richard Williams. It's about all the, if you want to kind of learn some old school animation stuff, it's a very nice reference book, and I still use it. And when we talk about walk cycles, I kind of like to refer back to his kind of breakdown of walk cycles. I think are really, really good. So, but here, this little hit gives you, it kind of sells it a little bit better. I don't know if you can tell because we're on Zoom, so it's a little harder to see because it's a little spotty, the playback, but it just gives it a little chunkier feel. This is the kind of thing you'll get a little bit, you'll start to get the feel for this in your own stuff. Don't worry if you don't really see it right this second today. But these are kind of little animators' choices this is kind of building a bit of a grammar about the animation language. So that's edit mode.
I've got a quick question if you don't mind.
Yeah, totally.
It looks like you're viewing through the FOV of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
You have kind of the outsides of your focal point grayed out.
Uh-huh.
How do you pull that FOV up?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Let's see. Maybe this will make more sense if I'm gonna middle mouse click and drag to move into 3D view here. So you can see how this animation is taking place on this plane in 3D view. So, it's kind of funny, right? So, you know, as this is playing, we can zoom around and see it from the top. You know, we can look at it from down here. So this is one of the reasons I really like Blender, is because you can do this kind of a thing. So you can start to, already you're like, I could do a 2D animation, but have it take place in a 3D space. Interesting.
Or from 3D, or like, can you export, like, because I know you can export from the 2D. Can you export that 3D look, or is that?
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of going back to Dave's question about the camera. So here's our camera, right? So what I could do is I could move this camera in 3D space. And so the shortcut again for moving things in Blender is G. Now, I have to select the camera first in order to do that. Let's see, camera, select. I don't know why it wasn't letting me select it. Okay, G. Oh, the camera's locked. That's interesting.
It's because you're not in object mode, you're in edit mode.
Thank you. Oh, bless you. Yeah, that's a classic. I'm glad I demoed that for you guys. Because I swear to God, I've done that so many times. I've been using Blender for years, and I'm still like, it's not working. It's like, okay. Object mode, thank you. So now we're in object mode, and now I can move the camera around. Unfortunately, it turned white, so you can't really see where I'm moving it. Oops. But I'm just moving it around kind of randomly. Instead of moving it around randomly, I'm going to move it around on the y-axis. So the way you do that in Blender, it's really cool, is you just go G and then Y. And now it restricts it. You can see the orange dot, which is so I'm going to just move this in really close to this scene. And I'm going to let go. So now you can see it again. So now it's moved closer in 3D space. And I'm going to go back to camera mode by clicking on my camera button. And so now we've zoomed in. So that's cool. I can go back to 3D mode just by middle mouse clicking and dragging. And now I can just go GY, and I can pull really far back if I want to. GY, move it on the y-axis, and go back to camera mode. And now I'm looking at it from here. So that's really cool. You know, that's, again, this is a super powerful tool. So Emily's question, if I were to take my camera and just move it, let's say I'll move it out in, I'll say I'll just move it up GZ, which is the up axis. And then I will maybe move it on X, GX. And then I'll rotate this. R is the shortcut for rotate. I'll rotate it on Z. And then I'll switch this to, well, I'll switch this to local axis. And I'll rotate this on X. And I'll go back to my camera view. So now I am looking at this in the 3D. It's a 3D view. So this is kind of hard to go R, X, G, Y, all this crud when you're moving a camera around. Because like when we, take our phones out and take a video of something, we're not like G, X, Y, R, Z, we're just moving the thing around, right? So it's a lot, and we're looking through the camera. So it's much preferable, I think, when you're doing camera work. It's good to have this option because sometimes you really do want to think almost kind of engineering or mechanically about the way the camera's moving so you can get that precise control. But it's more common to switch to what's called lock camera to view. So we do that with our handy dandy side menu. And what's the shortcut for the side menu? N. So I'm going to hit N, bring up the side menu. And then I'm going to go to the view.
Those like shortcuts, or is it
What's
just?
that?
Can you change those shortcuts? Or like, does it have
You
to be
can.
N?
Yep, you can.
All right, cool.
I mean, N is one of those that I would probably recommend leaving because it comes up so much. But you can change it. But don't take my word for it. Go ahead and change it. I guess I do that because, like, since I'm teaching all the time, I want I don't want to screw people up with my weird shortcuts. But if you want to create your own world, do it. Oh yeah, and you can do that under Edit, Preferences. Where is it here? Key map, and you can go through and set keyboard shortcuts for everything. And also, I'll show you another. Actually, this is great because this is an example of a shortcut I use all the time, which is lock camera to view. And which is right here. There's a little box here. And also, very importantly, I want to unlock the camera to view. So one of the nice things about not having the camera locked to view is I can just, as soon as I middle mouse click and drag, I'm outside of the camera view. I'm no longer looking through the camera, which a lot of times we want that when we're building a scene. But to actually locate my camera, I want to have lock camera to view on. So let me get into my camera view. And so now I'll just click the lock camera to view button. And now I can use my keyboard shortcuts here. And I think this goes back to Dave's probably original question, which is like, now I can just, whatever I do, I'm middle mouse clicking and dragging, I'm middle mouse scroll wheeling, I'm shift middle mouse clicking and dragging the pan, or and then what's the other one? Oh yeah, zoom and rotate. So I can middle mouse just click and drag to rotate around. And you can animate the camera object itself, right? So you can, just like you would in real life, you could move the camera. Of course, that's animation, right? So we can animate our camera. We can animate the stuff inside of the camera. We can do all this in 3D. We can restrict it to 2D. So the world is our oyster with this. So now we're really getting into some interesting kinds of thoughts here. So right now I'm actually orbiting and moving the camera. So now if I go out of camera mode and I look at my scene, my camera's gone way over here, right? So this is cool because, like, I don't want to be thinking about where is my camera in 3D space. Like, who cares? Like, just it's fake. It's 3D space. But you want to just be able to do it interactively like that, and then it'll get to where it needs to be. Yeah, so that's cool. So then just make sure you turn it off once you get your camera set. So we're kind of going off piste here a little bit, but that's cool. Let's do it. So there's a way to set your own custom shortcuts really quickly on the fly. Kind of going back to Alex's question there. You can, what is it, right click and say Oh, so I already set a shortcut for this. I think mine is Control K, right? Yeah. So I set Control K as my shortcut for lock camera to view. Because I know that Control K, I think, is not really used for something else. That's kind of one of the problems with the shortcuts is sometimes you don't want to assign a shortcut that's really important for something later on. But whatever. Live on the edge. You can always reset. So you can right click on it, and I'm going to just remove that shortcut because I already set it. Okay. So now I'm going to set it. This is what you guys would do. You can just go over here, right click, and say assign shortcut. And then it says press a key. I'm going to hit Control K. And now Control K should be locked to that. Very cool. And you can do that with menu commands. You know, if you want to add a new menu command, like if you don't have a numpad, frame all is one I use all the time, or frame selected are ones I use all the time. So that might get kind of tedious to not have a shortcut assigned to that. So you can play around with that. Cool. All right. Yeah, it was kind of fun. Another thing you might want to consider, not so much maybe for this week, but I don't know, depends on what you're doing, is I'm kind of mixed on this one. I like the little G, X, G, Y, G, Z, because it's just kind of on the fly. But you could also, I'll go back to edit mode. So I've got that circle selected and I'll numpad period to zoom in. You could also go up here. You've got these little suckers up here, and we'll talk more about these when we get into 3D over here. This is the view modes, but let's go ahead to these two or these three over here. So these are determining how things show up in the viewport. So these don't determine how your scene is going to look at the very end when you render it out, but they just determine what our workspace, what shows up in our workspace. And so there's one here that's useful under the overlays, which is the two circles. And you can turn on, I always get this wrong. It's not the overlays. It's the viewport gizmos. Sorry, it's the second one right here. And there's a move gizmo that you can turn on. And so that gives you this little axis, the XYZ axis that just shows up. And to move, you don't have to hit G. You can just grab the red arrow, grab the blue arrow, you know, so it's kind of cool that way. Yeah. All right. Excuse me. That's interesting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start a new file and take this kind of from scratch. But actually, before I go on, sorry, I do want to call your attention to the idea of these things that are called scenes. And so I actually don't use scenes very much. I probably don't use them as much as I should. But a scene is a way to have kind of multiple Blender files within one Blender file is the way I might think about it. And so right now there's a scene up here that I've created called ball, which is what we're looking at. But I've also created two more scenes or four more scenes in here, eye and two eyes. So if I go to eye, it takes me to a whole other timeline down here. So I'm in a whole, I have different setup for what we're doing here. And so this is, I've taken our little ball and I've made it into an eyeball. And we'll go over how to do this today. And then there's another one up here called two eyes. So and so these are all in the same Blender file.
I've got another question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, certainly.
I don't remember what it was called. The holding.
Moving hold.
Moving hold, where
Yeah.
where it's makes the lines all squiggly and everything.
It's the
Is that-
noise modifier.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show you. We'll go through that again, actually, so that we'll take this whole thing from the top and we'll just cruise through. So now you get a chance to see it a second time.
Okay, yeah. But the implementation of that, using that, is that more of just an artistic sort of preference, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to do it that way. And like if you're using a different program, you could just, you don't have to have moving holds. But well, I'm using the term moving hold is a flexible term. So you can use moving hold, like the way it's used more like in 3D animation is like you wouldn't have the 3D model doing that, right? Just going like in some weird, it would look weird in 3D, but you would like a moving hold in a 3D shot. Like look at a Pixar movie sometime. Like I remember looking years ago, looking at like Toy Story 2 or something. And they even have a joke on that in the outtakes of Toy Story 2, I think it is, where they have those little outtakes at the end of the Pixar movies, and they have like where I can't remember if it's Buzz and Woody, one of those two, goes up to the other one and they slap them on the back, and then they fall over, and it's just a cutout of them. So that's an animator's joke, right? Because that's a non-moving hold. It's not the character. But look at a crowd scene in a Pixar movie, and you can see that the characters don't quite freeze. But they're not moving very much at all, because in animation, you realize like how much motion distracts from other motion. So in a Pixar movie, they do a good job of keeping the crowd alive without making them distracting. So it's kind of like it's this relative term. So I could be doing a moving hold that's like this, and if I'm in the background of a scene, people are like, what the hell is that guy doing back there? So you might say, oh, let's chill that out a little bit. So my moving hold might be a little bit of like kind of more like an idle animation in a video game or something, like a little bit of this, or an eye blink. An eye blink is a great moving hold technique. So you're not really moving anything, you're just changing the eye position, so like this character has a blink, I think, or blink or two, I think I was doing. So it just it's another way of thinking about how to keep. Do I have a blink here? No, I don't have a blink in this. Oh, I thought I had some blinks in here. Anyway, blinks are a classic little idle cheat.
Miles,
Yeah.
would like the Mortal Kombat like classic like swaying back and forth,
Yep.
that would be a moving hold, right?
Yeah. But I would consider that more of an idle animation, but it's a moving hold. I mean, yeah, you could call it a moving hold, sure, totally. I think the subtler you get, like in like high end feature film animation, a moving hold would be considered more like, oh, this character's holding a bottle, and so kind of like you go from you would go from, like, let's say I'm catching the bottle, so you're animating the catch. So you think about, so the character is going to be here waiting for it, the bottle's going to come in, right? I'm going to catch it, and then I might go like this a little bit back, and then I kind of come to here. So there's a little bit, and I might hold this for a while, and it's probably going to be fairly subtle, like the move, and so it's like it's a really subtle thing, or the way we kind of ease into a position. It doesn't just necessarily stay stock still, or it's kind of just a subtle, you can make it as subtle or as dramatic as you want. So like the Mortal Kombat thing, but for a video game, yeah, I would totally call that a moving hold. And in video games, you tend to hear that referred to more as an idle animation, where it's kind of a neutral pose for the character, because the character is you're going to control the character, but that's the kind of the symbol that your character's in this neutral state and it's ready to do something. So yeah, that's great. So these terms are not hard and fast. They don't mean this and not that. They're definitely, you could kind of explore what those can mean to you. Yeah, that's cool.
Hey, Miles.
Yeah.
So I had a question about the scene thing that you just
Yeah,
were
totally.
showing us.
How do we do that?
Well, no, I was just looking at it and I can't see it. What I was wondering is this something that could be used for like creating modularity within a file? You know how
Yeah.
so because like if I'm having issues with something and there's too many polygons and my thing is loading slowly, could I separate things into scenes?
Yep. Yeah. If you wanted to work on models at different, yeah. That yeah.
Cool.
Potentially. Or it could make things worse. I don't know. But no, that's the idea. Yeah. So if you wanted to have different things, it's still the Blender file is going to be the same size.
Yeah, of course, but
yeah.
I imagine that the
Yeah.
time, etc., the ability to move around within it, do
Yeah,
more
that overhead shouldn't be as bad.
easier. So
Yeah.
cool. That's
Like I said, I don't really use them that much. Like I should more maybe.
yeah. Well, you know, it's part of like file management.
Yep.
You don't
Totally.
have to do it.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's play around with this again. So I'm going to make a new 2D animation. And I'm going to look through the camera. And if I want to just zoom this view in, if I want the camera to just I don't want to move my camera, but I want the camera to take up more of the window. I can hit the home key and that will maximize that. So that's kind of nice. All right. So yeah. So just to review, we're in draw mode. We've got the draw tool selected. We're using the pencil tool just to start off with. And what else? We have our dope sheet down here. The dope sheet is set to the grease pencil view. Because you can have a dope sheet open with something other than grease pencil view. You can have dope sheet, grease pencil, mask, action editor, all this other stuff. And then we have our playhead, which is the blue, and we have our layers of our stroke, and our stroke is the grease pencil object. So just again, we're going to be thinking in 2D for today. I'll draw our infamous circle here. Oh, and then it's coming out this light gray, which I don't want. So I'm just going to undo that. And I'm going to set the strength up here to 1. And I'm going to turn off my pressure sensitivity. And I think I got my pen working so I can draw here. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I've got my strength set to 1, and I'm going to go ahead and draw this. If I want my line to be bigger, wider, I can change the radius up here. So I can click and drag up here. So now I've got a thicker line. And I'm noticing my pen is operating incredibly slowly because I think this little laptop isn't handling all of this stuff very well, but oh well, I can live with it. All right, so I've got my ball here. And I'm going to scooch ahead. Oh, I'm going to set my frame rate again. So the frame rate is over here. Here are our tabs, our properties tabs. And I'm going to go to the output properties tabs, which is the little printer up here. And I'm going to set my frame rate to 12 for this project. This makes it a little easier. I usually animate at 24, but oops, custom first, custom, FPS 12. Okay. So, and like I said, you guys draw whatever you want. You don't have to draw what I'm drawing, but it's fine if you do. And I'm going to cruise out here to, let's say, I don't know, frame 15 or 12. I don't know, 15. That's fine. And I'm going to draw another. I'm going to draw my little anticipation frame going back. And I'll draw another one. Another example of a moving hold might be something like this, or if I want to hold this anticipation longer, I might take these 2 frames here and duplicate them, Shift D to duplicate, drag those out. And so now I'd be holding in this back. It's going to look pretty bad, but let's just see. You know, that holds that anticipation a little bit longer from 2 frames to 4 frames, and it's still moving. It's pretty lame, but that's a horrible example of a moving hold. But it might be like I would, instead of duplicating those frames, which is pretty janky, I would probably maybe just draw another frame that's pretty close. So it's just a taste kind of a thing. And so that it's basically holding in that position, even though it's got a little bit of movement, but in contrast to the big movement, it's essentially a hold. And so here's the big move. So I've been using these smear frames. I don't have to, you know, I could do a squash and stretch. So I think this time, just for variation, I'll do a squash and stretch. So I'll do a stretch first. So I'm going to have this thing zip. Well, actually, I'll do this without a squash and stretch first, just so you can see how big, and this will introduce us to spacing. So you can see how the space between these 4 keyframes is not very much. Not on the timeline, but in, like, the ball isn't moving very much. So the spacing is very close. The balls are spaced close together. But I can jump to the next frame and make a huge spacing change like this. I can go, ah, haha, something like that. And so now the spacing has increased, right? Bow. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to increase the spacing even more, and that's going to give us a sense of acceleration. But the ball will be moving faster. So let's play that back. I'm going to shorten my playback range to, let's say, 50 frames. Okay. And I could play around with the position. This is what we call adjusting the spacing. If I move things on the timeline, that's called adjusting the timing. So if I do this, I'm adjusting the timing of the action. So it happens earlier. That's kind of interesting, actually. You know,
I have a question.
Yeah, Alexandria.
So thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So I was trying to like keep my objects on, like, I had 3 balls that were like bouncing. I was just practicing, and I wanted to keep them kind of moving at intervals. So I had set lines as like planes for the motion. Is there a way to do that without actually drawing a line so that it doesn't show up in the animation?
Totally. Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can do that. Many ways to win. So let's do that. Let's say I want to set up a reference line. The easiest way to do it would just be to go to the grease pencil object down here, the data, the object data, which is this tab down here, the little green tab. And we can go to the fill layer because there's nothing on our fill layer right now. And on the fill layer, with that selected, I'm just going to draw a line like wherever, like here, let's say. Whoops. Why is that not showing up? Do that. Fill layer. Come on, fill layer. Fill layer materials. Fill layer. What am I doing? There it goes. All right. So now I've got a reference line. So it's there. Okay, great. And then I'm like, I'm sick of that thing. Just turn it off. So, you know, that you can use, and you can add layers over here. So we can rename this. We can call this reference, you know, ref lines or whatever. And so you can make as many as you want. And so you can make them on different keyframes if you want, or you can make them all on the first keyframe and they'll just stay for the whole thing.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right. Now, that being said, this probably won't make any sense to you guys right now, but when it comes time to render out your final animation, like in a week, let's go ahead and I'll just throw this into your subconscious, at least up here. A quirk of Blender is that these eyeballs don't affect the render, so that you're like, hey, this looks great. And then when I went to render this out to video, it would show this. It will always show that reference line, even if it's turned off here. So if you want to actually turn it off in the render, you have to go up here to this little goofy funnel up here in the outliner and say, oh, actually, and I don't know why they don't have these on by default. I wish they did. I just go ahead and turn on all of these, all of them. That way I don't have to think about it. And you're not going to use all of them necessarily right away. But what these do is they give you, see the camera? The camera means that's the render. So what we want is like, don't show it in the render. Oh, actually, wait, but grease pencil might be different. I'm sorry. That's for objects. That's for 3D objects. Grease pencil might not. Yeah, I think grease pencil, it might be that if it's off, it's off. That would be nice. So I think, yeah, I might have false alarmed you there. So, but for anything 3D, which we'll be getting into, you're going to want to know that. So now you know. There are all kinds of cool things you can do with that. Actually, like these, the mask layers, and you can do some really powerful stuff with that. But this, I think it's just off. I think it will turn it off.
I think you can check if you hit Z and then go to rendered view.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
You can double check that up top. Yeah, and that also gets rid of the onion skinning, because you're not going to see that in the render.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Cool. I like it. Yeah, so I think we're okay with our reference lines just being turned off here. Nice. So this is interesting. I actually kind of like this change in the timing. This is kind of what this does is it makes this first move the big move, and then it kind of goes into this becomes anticipatory to the actual big move. It just changes it, you know? And that's what I think is cool about animation, is like the more you can experiment with this and you're not worried about the drawing, the more you can actually see the animation, the motion, the change. Like, it doesn't matter if the fingers are drawn right. You know what I mean? It's like, just see how just moving things around the timeline or changing the spacing works. So if I want to change the spacing again, I could say, well, this is kind of almost what I would call an even spacing, right? Like it's a little bit closer to this side than this side, but let me increase that. So I'm going to go to edit mode, select that, and I left my move on, overlay up here under the gizmo, and I can just drag it back or hit GX to drag it back. Or actually we're in 2D space, so you can just hit it in G. So we can actually pull this back quite a bit. So it's going to really accelerate after that. So let's see what this looks like. So still works. And what that does is it gives us a little sense of it like this. It kind of, it's like slow to fast, slow to fast, slow to fast. We're going to see this again when we get into the infamous bouncing ball. But for right now, and I could also take this, I could just delete this, X, go into draw mode again, and I can make a stretch. I can stretch this before as it hits, like whoosh, whoops, lines. There we go. Draw mode, something like that. Stretch into it, and then squash, whatever. Now, if I wanted to have this kind of squash back out, I could do a little thing I'm not going to duplicate this hit point because that's the thing that when you look about that hit, you don't necessarily want to duplicate it too many times. You don't want to do it 3 times. Twice is good. So 1, 2, and then I'm going to have this thing kind of bounce off. Let's say like this. I know I'm making this too small. That's okay. And then I'll do something like this. I'll do something like this maybe. And then this, I don't know. See what that looks like. So the spacing on this, if we go back to our onion skinning over here, a grease pencil object, lines, go down to the onion skinning section, we can increase the amount of keyframes to show from before and after so we can see more of it. So you can kind of see the spacing. So we've got a really tight spacing here, big spacing here, really huge spacing here. And then again, a pretty small spacing over here that is small, then it kind of increases by the last time that it comes down here. So we're not doing everything even. That's the thing we're trying to get to here is we don't just evenly space all of the motion. That tends to be very boring. And so we're kind of interested in this contrast of spacing. Just to go ahead and add our kind of movement to this, which it's a cheesy way just to get that little bit of extra life to it. We'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add the modifier. I'm going to save my work at this point too. Save. And I'm going to go to the modifier tab over here. I'm going to add a modifier. It's the wrench. Add a modifier, which is noise. I can just play this back. So you can see that's a pretty obnoxious amount there. It's like kind of this weird thing. So I'm going to drop this position down. I'm going to choose thickness of the line a little bit. And then maybe the noise scale can come up a little. And then under randomize, I want to open that up and drop my steps down because since I'm animating at 12 frames a second, that's pretty slow. I'm going to go ahead and make this like 2 or 1. So it's a little faster. It's pretty subtle. So you can kind of experiment a little bit. Just drag these sliders around until it looks the way you want it to look. All righty. So I'm going to maybe hold that for a bit. So let's go here. And I know I'm kind of off model, but I don't really care. Now I'm going to maybe extend this to 60 frames. And you can also control your timeline with this little slider down here. This is probably the easiest way to do it. I know that this might be the easiest way to actually control your view of the timeline. I'll go out here maybe to 40, and I'm going to have this thing zip back. So I'm going to draw another frame going back. And another one. And then this time I'm going to use my little zip trick. Whatever. And then turn my grease pencil on. I need to see the frames before. Oops. Yeah, ball got really small over here. It's big. Whatever. I suck. It's okay. All right. And we're going to go something like this. Let's go back. There it is. Snap. And then last but not least, I'll duplicate this frame from the first one. Shift D. Pull it out of here. So it kind of lands. And I'm going to move this over a little bit. Edit. Pull that back. And edit. Pull that back. That's mark. So now we have a little loop. Cool. Save my work. All right. So, thoughts, questions, complaints, grievances. Just want to check in, make sure we're is this kind of making sense now? Are you getting some? Anyone want to show what they're working on? Anyone have any goofy stuff they're doing?
You told us last class to try something out, so I did.
Let's see it. Yeah, let's check it out.
It's kind of what it's an expression of how this class is making me feel.
Good, I love it.
I don't think I've actually ever shared in Zoom before.
Uh-oh. It's a big moment.
Is that working?
Yep. Ooh, nice.
So this is me, obviously.
Yeah. Obviously.
And again, I was just totally screwing around here.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Nice one. Yeah. Cool. Very cool. That's great. Anyone else? Yeah, I like that. That turned out great, Dave. This will be fun. You can actually you can start to work with some of this stuff. Yeah, keep going.
I could share something I did.
Awesome. Yeah, bring it on, Gary.
Second. Sorry, I got crazy dogs running around my house. I'll close the door on that. Open up this window here. View animation. Let's share screen.
Balls.
You guys see that?
Yeah.
The heart thing here.
Whoops.
Hold on. Share screen. There we go.
Ooh,
Render the animation.
cool. Nice. That's cool. I like that background thing. That's really cool.
Thanks. I just used a plane and used an image as material.
Wow.
And then that explosion, that heart explosion, was a pre-made thing in Blender, so I didn't actually manually do that or anything.
That's cool.
And then the hearts, I just linked up in sequence and just moved them up out of the thing. So like it's all very, very simple. The same things that you were just showing us.
Yeah.
It just looked fancy because of the colors on it.
Yeah.
You know, if I broke it down to wireframe, it would look just like what you were just doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Looks awesome.
Thanks.
Very cool. Oh, cool. So Alex, I see you're working on a script. That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. And then I don't know if you've heard the term animatic before, but an animatic is you can do that. Yeah, you've heard that. So Blender is a great way.
I have tried that in the past, and that is because I'm hoping one day to like option it in like a TV show or a film or something.
Perfect.
So it's something to like demonstrate to like a studio or something. Hey, here's an idea that has a visual attached to it.
That's great. Yeah, animatics are great for that. To show people what the idea is. People that aren't necessarily animators, but you can kind of give a sense of. And in a way, we were talking about this the other day. I mean, like a lot of anime is almost like a glorified animatic. The cheesiest of it is just kind of like stills, like sliding across the screen and stuff. But the point is like anime, like that stuff. I love that stuff. I mean, it can really convey a lot. So yeah, without doing full, Studio Ghibli animation, you can get a really effective animated experience for people. That's cool. All right. Anyone else? I can jump back in.
I got a little thing I made after last class.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Dan.
Let me. Wow, I struggle with this every time. Share screen.
Me too.
Share that one. There. See that? It's all rendered up. You guys see the video?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, looks great.
A little guy.
Nice. I love it. Hey, right on. That's great.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right on. That's great. It's looking really good. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, like there's a lot of, you're having a lot of fun with the kind of the motion and just like that's kind of fun to experience. You just have to experiment with it, like just those kind of arbitrary marks almost of like the whoosh and the stuff. You just got to play with it. That's some really nice squash and stretch frames.
I like really the little smear on his face here.
Totally.
Like,
yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah,
that's great. It's lively. You know what I mean? It really makes it like the looser you are and like the less uptight you are, I think you can really get this really appealing sense of like life to these characters. That looks really great. Yeah.
Thank you.
That. Oops. Yeah. And nice weight, impact and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah. Nice. Right on. Fun.
Thank you.
Fun on the run. Cool. All right. So yeah, this is looking good. So we were talking about where was this? Yeah, Yeah, maybe. So we've been working with kind of the idea of moving holds, some smear frames, wash and stretch.
I had a really quick question.
What was that?
I had a really quick, sorry.
Yeah,
I had a really quick question.
Totally.
So I hope this isn't too advanced, but I'm trying to simplify my art style for when I draw people at least.
Mhm.
And I'm finding a little bit of difficulty with that. Do you have any suggestions?
Sure, like for animation.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought Danny's, if Danny show yours, I thought that was great, actually.
Mhm.
Look, check out Danny's again.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah.
I just feel like I have a very complicated
Yeah.
art style. It's so
No,
cute.
it's true. When you're doing something like comics or animation, you have to simplify.
Right. And because I was looking and the way I draw, I took figure drawing with Ted like last term.
Classic. Yeah.
And I really honed in on how to draw the figure. And now I'm like trying to draw an entire person or like the facial features and all that in an animation. And I'm finding like I use Procreate and I'm like literally using 50 layers to make a smile and it's really frustrating.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm trying to simplify it. I'm trying to stick with sort of like what you're doing with the square, which also that looks super good, by the way. I'm realizing I'm gonna have to round. I have a very round style, so I'm trying to round it out, but I don't really know how to do a quality animation. I feel like it just looks funny, if that makes sense.
You want to show it? Can you show it to us, or is it the
the
capability of sharing on that or not?
I it's on my iPad, so I can turn around my iPad.
Let me maximize it here. Hold on.
So this is like a basic animation I've tried with thanks. This is a basic animation I've tried with my regular style.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
here we go.
Cool. Oh yeah, looks good.
It just looks
great.
funky, and then
I don't think it looks funky at all. I mean,
you
I
don't
don't
think so?
No. I think it looks weird to you.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because when you're doing it, it's like it's like hearing your own voice when you record yourself. You're like, I don't sound like that.
Yeah.
And then the rest of us are like, well, it sounds like you, and we like the way your voice. We're not like, wow, Vega has a really weird voice or something like that. It just sounds fine. And I think with animation, it's like it feels awkward because we're not used to seeing our drawings move, and so and our drawings aren't going to move like we move right away. That the amount of refinement it takes to really do like elaborate, like, you know, if I was to animate someone doing this, it would take a really long time, you know. So I think you're on the right track. And I think that like what I saw just from that is like you're thinking about the shapes, the simplified shapes underneath. That's good.
Okay.
Like the classic thing would be to, and what I would also really recommend that you do, and this goes for anybody who's interested in a more kind of realistic style, is watch other animators animate. Especially people that are in the style that you're interested in, because then you're going to see how do they actually build up to that style. Because animation is always about build up, and we make what are called passes through an animation. So you'll hear this phrase over and over again when you talk to animators. It's like, well, make another pass through it. Or how many passes did you take on that? Or like, do you have time for another pass on it? And that means where you work through the whole thing from start to finish, and then you just kind of refine. Right. And then you refine and you refine. So you go from the rough to the smooth, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
So I think you're on the right track. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
Okay,
fantastic.
fantastic.
And it seems like you already are thinking about it, and maybe just see how much you can get done with just the simplest shapes. Like you've got kind of the basic head shape, the basic body shape, and then animate with those shapes.
Gotcha.
And then see how far you can get. See if you can get an animation blocked in, and then you go back and make passes through it. So now I'm going to connect the head to the body. Now I'm going to add the zipper. Now I'm going to add the whatever. But each of those things would be a pass, like as opposed to just doing a perfect drawing and then doing another perfect drawing. That's going to drive you crazy. So I
Yeah,
think you're,
no.
when I saw it, it looks like you're on the right track.
Okay,
Like
cool.
those-
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
yeah. And use those holds. We like holds, like because it's like, hey, what's going on? I'm doing fine. You know, like you don't. There's not a lot of animation in there. It's like in comics, like the cheesiest panel you can ever draw is like our Zoom, what we look like on Zoom, which is like, you know, here up, like beep, head, beep, done.
That's what I'm best
Everyone
at.
wants to draw those panels. They're really boring to look at. But in animation, you know, it's like like kind of you got to call your shots, like pick your spots, you know, as far as where you're going to spend your time animating. So when you need to do a complicated animation, try to avoid it until the last possible, like until you really go, oh, this is it. You know, I've got to, and make it fun. Don't waste a lot of time doing stuff that's really tedious and boring and not fun. So that's what I would say.
And anime is
you.
all about moving holds. Like
Yeah,
most of the frames in
exactly.
anime are just like the person, like the actual person is stationary, but the camera is moving.
Yep.
Like panning or zooming in or zooming out
Totally.
or something. That's like, yeah, that's most of what you watch when you watch anime.
Yeah, and a big move is not a lot of frames. That's the genius of it. It's like, and if you do comics, you kind of get that. You're like, oh yeah, if I just go from here, and then I might draw a frame like this, and then I draw a frame like this, and then I'm done. It might just be literally like 2 frames, you know, but this might be holding for like 20 frames or 40 frames. I might just basically be in this kind of a moving hold position, just like Ava's saying, you know, I'm in this basic moving hold, and then I go, oh, 3 frames, wah, and then I'm in another moving hold. And then I might have a little cycle where I'm like, I can't believe you said that to me, you know, or whatever. So yeah, so that's that. I think if you're doing realistic stuff, I would really focus on that kind of
Yeah.
thing of like the
I
storytelling.
Yeah, because I have to admit I wonder if everyone in here can relate to this. I was watching one of my favorite animators, and she's so good at animating to the point that it looks like a movie. Like
Mhm.
she does the camera angles
Yeah.
even
Oh yeah,
to the point
totally.
that and it's so fluid. You're kind of like, I know this is drawn, but I don't understand how. So I just feel like I want to be there already, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I
I know.
noticed, yeah, and I noticed from the first class even, I watched one of her animatics again, and I saw exactly what you were talking about in like holds and stuff.
Yep.
So I saw her, I was like, wait, that's a still. Wait, that's a like an idol. I was like, wait, that's so crazy. It
Yeah.
felt good to like recognize that.
If you want to, and I love that. I mean, and sometimes you'll come across like people that are just kind of too good at it, if they can, and like the one that I always talk about, like if you this is I would recommend you don't watch this video if you're trying to learn how to draw like this guy. And a lot of you guys have probably seen him, Kim Jong-ji, who's just ridiculous, right? Like he just draws, he's like, it's like watching like a laser printer. He's just so amazing. And he just goes, and whatever. It's just, it's like kind of a miracle, you know? It's like, and I'm like, well, that is insane. That's awesome. And so I think you can learn a lot from it, but also it's kind of hopeless. You're like because you try to do that and you're like, wait, this isn't working out right. So you know, but it works for him, and so there might be a lesson there of like, maybe like the way I've been being taught how to draw is kind of wrong. Maybe I'm not thinking about this the right way, you know. So I like it. I don't know, but also it's like that's the kind of thing I would have seen that when I was younger and been like, oh god. You know, so yeah, cool. All right, well, let's go ahead. I'll just jump back in. We'll do a couple more things here, and then we'll see where we get. So, you know, one of the kind of the funny things was to start to think about, well, what, you know, maybe we'll make this into some eyes, you know, and this will show us a few more little functional things about the way the program works as well. So I'm going to go back into draw mode. And let's see. So I'm going to make this into a cycle. Okay.
You need to share your screen.
Oh, yeah, I should do that. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? That would probably help. Okay. Thank you. All right. So let's see. I think I will add a new layer. So I'll change the name of my layer here. I'll call this pupil. I'll add a new layer up here. I'll call this eye. Okay. And so on the eye layer, which is its own layer, I'm just going to draw a big eye that kind of encompasses this.
So are the layers the same as scenes, or are they two different things?
Two different things.
Two different things. Okay.
The layers are a subset of each grease pencil object. So we just have one grease pencil object right now called stroke. And so this has this, and the scenes are up here, and you add scenes by going to this little menu up here. So yeah, that's a good question. So the layers are basically just layers within this one object, kind of like Photoshop layers, basically. And I'm going to use my eraser. I'm going to use the point eraser. Just kind of get one here, or not. That's not, there it goes. I just redraw this. All right, that's fine. This guy needs to visit the eye doctor, I guess. All right. So let's talk a little bit about materials. We can work with different materials, and they have different properties. So if we go down to this little beach ball tab over here, this is called the materials tab. And so when you work with a new 2D scene, it gives you these 4 pre-made materials here: solid stroke, square stroke, solid fill, dot stroke. So I'm going to go to my eyeball layer. So I'm going to go back to my grease pencil object. And this took me a while to figure out how all this stuff works. It's kind of confusing. And you can make custom layouts and stuff. So if you wanted to have all this stuff accessible to you at the same time, I find it confusing to have to switch back and forth between all these tabs. So you can make a custom layout where all these tabs are all open. But for today, we'll just switch back and forth. I'm going to go to my eye, and then I'm going to go down to the material, and I'm going to switch it to a different material. I'm going to call it, let's see, I have to go into edit mode. So I go to edit mode, go into my eye, select the stroke of the eye, go to my materials tab, and I'm going to switch it to square stroke. I'm going to select it. I'm going to say assign. Okay. So now I have something that looks like this. Go back to draw mode. Oh, and I missed this part of the stroke over here. So it's black still. So I'm going to go back to edit mode, select this black stroke, and assign it. There we go. And I have another one. Okay, there we go. So I just changed the material on this object. So that's cool. Now check this out. There's also something called fill. So we have stroke, but we also have something called fill. So I can click fill and it fills it. So I could make this look a gray, let's say, for right now. And this goes back to Alex's question right now. So with these layers in grease pencil, you can tell that this eye is on top of the pupil. We want to have, and so we can't see the pupil anymore. So let's go down here back to the grease pencil object, select the eye layer, and use these little arrows down here. You can't just click and drag them. Use these little arrows to move the eye layer below the pupil layer. Now we can see the pupil layer again. So what if I want to make the eyeball, the pupil black all the way through? I could experiment. Sometimes I can get lucky with this, and I can just go to my material tab, select the solid stroke, which is what we drew the eye in, the pupil in rather, and then turn on the fill layer. And now we have, this is solidified. So I'll turn on the fill layer, and it actually worked this time. So hey, we might have a few janky frames. I don't know. Oh, it looks pretty good. So you can change the names of these materials. So I'll call this like black fill. And I'll call this, I don't know, something else. And so I can go back. And so you see how we've got these squares, kind of this dotted line. I can get rid of that. I can say mode type line. So now it's just a red line with a gray fill. All right, that's fine. Or I could make it into, you know, a blue line. And I could change the eyeball color to be kind of this yellow like I did before or something. So, you know, yeah. And the cool thing about this is that it does it retroactively to everything. It's like the whole, every instance of this material will have this effect. So. Cool. All right. I'll save this as. Actually, I'm going to undo all this. Do it again. All right, so I'm back to where I started from. This will just take a second. I'm going to redo it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this into a different scene. I'm going to go up here to the scene, and I'm going to call this first one ball. This is just like I did in the one that I uploaded. And now I'm going to make a new scene here with this new scene button. And it's going to give me a choice. And I'm going to say I want to make this a full copy. And a full copy means it's going to take everything that I've got in this scene, put it into the new scene. But it's not going to be linked to that original scene. So Gary, this might be something you want to play around with. Is sometimes you want that to be linked, and sometimes you don't want it to be linked. So I'm going to make an unlinked copy. And I'm going to call that I1. So now, in I1, if I make something here, like I'll just draw something. I don't know why that didn't work. Draw, I say. GP layer. Okay, whatever. It will not be in ball. So there's my ball scene. That is not in that. So everything that's going to be in here is fresh, is unique to the eye layer. So I'll do that. So now I'm going to do that, what I just did. So I go back to my grease pencil object, change this to eye, move it to the bottom of the stack, draw the eye. Erase it. Change the material. The reason I'm changing the material first is that it will change. If I just change this, it would make the other things that are drawn with that material have the same effect, which I don't want. I just want to have the eye object have that. So I'm going to go, I'll choose the solid fill one. Stroke, assign, color, fill. So now I'm going to change my stroke, my grease pencil object from the name stroke. I'm going to call it GPI. And now we're going to get meta here. This is our meta moment for the day. We're going to duplicate the grease pencil object itself. Ooh. So the way we do that is we go to object mode. And now we duplicate GPI. So I select GPI in object mode. I hit Shift D and I drag this over. And now I have 2 of these. So now in object mode, we're going to add a new blank, empty grease pencil object. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to go up here to, I'm going to go back to frame 1. And I'm going to go up here to the add menu. So in object mode, I have to make sure I'm in object mode. Add grease pencil blank. So this is going to give me a new grease pencil object, a blank grease pencil object. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. And I'm going to start drawing. So here's the grease pencil. Now this is going to be a little bit different. When you make a fresh grease pencil object, it doesn't give us any materials down here, which kind of sucks. Whatever. And it only has 1 layer, which is kind of nice actually. But I'm going to go down to the materials tab on my new blank G. It's just called G pencil. I'm going to call this head, GP head. And I'm going to add a new material. So I'm going to go new material. And this will be a black line. That's fine. And I'm going to call this headline. And I'm going to start drawing with it. So I go into draw mode. And I'm going to start drawing. Let's see, maybe make the radius bigger. A lot bigger. Why is that so small? This is getting janky. Might be time to let the pencil die. I think what I'll do is I'll switch this over to from the pencil to the, which I'll kind of like this. Maybe I'll use this ink pen rough. Do I like that better? I'm going to turn off this radius pressure sensitivity. That's not cooperating with me today. Well, that's okay. Huh. Not sure what's going on. All right, that's all right. This guy looks like I feel right now. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to this GP head and I'm going to add the modifier to it. I'm going to try to add a thickness modifier because this is really ticking me off. There. Sometimes you just got to force it. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to add another modifier. I think I'll add some noise onto this as well. Randomize, change the step. So that thickness modifier is really useful if after the fact you realize you need to beef everything up a little bit. It's not showing up very well or something. That could be really helpful. Cool. I'm hypnotized. What do you have to tell me? All right. So, yeah, well, that's pretty good. It's a good day's work. Next week, what we're going to do is we'll talk about tweening and we'll work with shapes. We'll get the computer to do some more heavy lifting for us. And we'll look at kind of different ways we might want to, if we want to use color on this. And then, like I said, feel free to work ahead. Like, don't wait for me to show everything if you're feeling like fired up and you're ready to rock and roll. There's a ton of stuff you can find out, online. You can even learn stuff that doesn't seem to be relevant at all to what we're doing right now. Like, but just because you can, things like if you're working in 2D right now, we're like, oh, what's all this 3D stuff? Like Gary had that really cool thing that, he was working on, and you might be like, oh, yeah, well, huh. Like, how do you do that? Or you can start to play around with what happens if I move this stuff around in 3D space. Just before we go, I'll just because we've got a couple minutes, this would be kind of fun. So, oh yeah, let me show you this one thing actually. That there's the camera. Wow, that's funny. How did my camera get that way? That's really weird. What did I do? No.
I have a quick question really quick.
Sure.
That's redundant. Can you really just explain what the morphing and some kind of color transitions means in the assignment?
We'll cover that next week, but just kind of an out. But like a morph is basically like where we change something into something else. And actually, I'll give you a good guy to look at for who does a lot of fun kind of morphing stuff. All right, 1 second here. It's called, yeah. Check this out. Called Love and Theft. I'll put this on the Discord. But this is an example. This whole film is just really basically about morphing, and morphing just means changing from one thing into another. And I'll show you another person who kind of goes into it like a simpler version of this. But let's go ahead and I'll share this. Let's just take a look at it really fast. No, actually, I don't want to share this because I got into trouble with YouTube because I was like showing stuff, and then when I upload the videos, they're like, "Hey, you're violating copyright." So, but you can just check it out on your own there. And then the other person to look at who's done some fun stuff, who's doing some fun morphing stuff, is there are all kinds of uses of this technique. The classic is the Terminator 2, where Terminator 2 is like, you know, Robert Patrick, that he morphs into like Silver Guy. You know, and then he's like Silver Guy, and then he morphs into like a hammer or whatever. That's kind of a morphing example. But yeah, Chris Piasek. This guy's kind of a lettering. We looked at him in the motion graphics class sometimes because he does a lot of lettering work, is what he's best known for. But he also is starting to do some animation stuff, and he considers himself not an animator, you know, but he's doing animated stuff because like when his line of work, you know, GIFs and logo work, things that change around. So he's got these goofy ones of like these little morphs, like of like, you know, Homer turning into Barney, turning into Flanders and whatever. So. Yeah, so actually, let me see. How's this going to work? So if I take this for some, okay. So for whatever reason, I'm not sure how this even happened. This is lined up on the ground plane, which is fine. So what I want to do, and I'm just going to show this really fast, is I'm going to link these objects together so they're controlled by one master object, so I can rotate the whole thing. I don't want to rotate each piece separately. I have 3 pieces. I have, let me share the screen. I have.
Also, did you explain what color transitions were?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that next week.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to take, I've got 3 pieces. I have the eyes and I've got the head, the whole drawing. So what I want to do is I'm going to take all of these things and I'm going to add what's called an empty object. I'm going to go into object mode. And I'm going to add an empty object. I've got a whole range of things that these can look like. It doesn't matter. I'll use just the plane axis. All right. And so down there somewhere is this little crosshair thing, this little orange crosshair thing. And I'm going to go to the object data, which is now a crosshair thing. And I'm going to increase the size, but like, I'll make it like 10, make it huge. Even bigger, 20. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the eye, and the head. And then the last thing I'm going to select is the empty. And then I'm going to hit Control P, and that's going to parent those objects to the empty. So now I can rotate the empty and all of the objects will rotate with it. So I'm going to rotate this on X, R, X. And then I'm going to hold down the control key so it snaps it to 5-degree increments. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So now it's rotated up like that. So now if I look at my camera's all screwed up. And if I want to get the camera back to a 2D view, I can just select the camera, go to its object properties here, which is this square tab, and I can just set the rotations back to 0 and 0, and then set this locations back to 0. And then I'm going to rotate it on X. I think it's, let me see, let me go out of camera view. So I need to move it back on Y. So I'll move it back on Y, and I'm going to rotate it up on the X axis, or X90. Okay, so now I look through my camera. So I'm really zoomed in, and so I'm going to move it back on the Y axis. I'll go -30. Better. Negative. All right, there we go. So, and well, we're 1 minute over time, sorry. But I can go over here now and right click on the empty, select hierarchy, Shift D, and I have multiple versions. So now I get some strange things happening, and I can scale that down, you know. Move that up here. Anyway, we'll keep playing with this stuff on next Tuesday. So, but for you guys right now, just get wild, get crazy, start making stuff, get a little bit out of control. That's okay. Save multiple versions, do different things, just experiment. Don't get too uptight. If you find yourself getting frustrated, just let yourself get back to try to set yourself back to play mode, and where it doesn't matter. You know, just let yourself experiment with squiggly things and fast. Don't spend, if you find yourself spending more than like 5 minutes on drawing any given frame, you're going too slow. Like make it, don't get too fixated too fast, you know. That way you get to discover the motion and the way movement works. So, all right, cool. Don't want to go on any longer than that. I'll leave it there, and I can hang out for a bit if people have questions. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you,
All right,
Miles.
cool.
Thank
All right,
you.
good to see everybody.
Thank you.